Climate change, destruction of the rainforest, extinctions. We humans have pretty much made a mess of our earthly home. Bestselling author Diane Ackerman has written a book about our impact on the world. But before you get depressed about it, know that we humans are also pretty clever, and we found all kinds of ways to heal the earth and all the other species around us. I'm not talking about solar panels and wind turbines. I'm talking about some really amazing stuff. Diane Ackerman's book is called The Human Age, and she joins me in the studio. Diane, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So I was expecting this to be a depressing book about all the animals that have gone extinct that'll never come back and how we've just really ruined everything.
It's so important that we keep a sense of hope these days. The news is full of depressing information, you're quite right, and the brain is naturally drawn to that. But if you just paid attention to what you're hearing in the media, it would be all horrors, and it would be all bad character, and you would think that the human species was not just doomed, but a terrible species. And that's just not true. There are also so many acts of mercy and heroism and radical acts of compassion taking place every day all over the planet. And yes, we have created a lot of planetary chaos in the climate. We've done it accidentally, which is important to remember. And now that we've become aware of it, we can actually, on purpose, get ourselves together to make it better.
That's if we want to.
If we want to, but it's in the best interest of every country on the planet.
The rate of species going extinct these days is really alarming. What does de-extinction mean?
De-extinction is the idea of using genetic engineering to bring back lost species. So, for example, we could bring back the woolly mammoth if we wanted to. And there are places.
There's no way.
Oh,
I mean, because they're gone. They're extinct.
They are extinct, but their remains are around. And now, using stem cell technology, it's possible from skin cells even to create eggs and sperm and impregnate, let's say, an elephant to carry a baby woolly mammoth. It wouldn't turn out to be exactly the same because that elephant's going to be really surprised when this woolly baby comes out, right? And it will probably be making different noises. It will, there'll be a different culture. And also, are we going to bring back all of the bacteria and microbiome and those critters that inhabited the animal? Because we know now that they make a huge difference in the personality and the behavior of all different kinds of animals and humans as well. But certainly there are a lot of people who want to do that and bring back the passenger pigeon and other creatures. But there are other things you can do with the DNA of endangered animals, which is why it's so very important that the Frozen Ark, which is collecting the DNA, be encouraged.
This is somewhere in England.
It is. It's in Nottingham. It's near Sherwood Forest.
And they're going around collecting DNA of everything?
Well, originally they were just collecting the DNA of endangered species. But then it occurred to them they needed to have the whole ecosystems. So they're collecting the DNA of all of the animals on the planet. Because you're right, extinction is happening very fast because we've been destroying habitats and polluting things. And there may come a time when we want to bring back animals, or we could use the technology just to enrich the gene pool of animals that are very close to extinction.
Diane, I've seen Jurassic Park, and I don't want to bring back the dinosaurs.
You don't want Anthropocene Park?
I don't know, but I don't want Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Dinosaurs are not on the table, sorry.
Okay.
For all the people who would like them, it's been way too long. But here's a thought. We could bring back Neanderthals. Then what?
Exactly.
What role would they play in our society? And in terms of, we won't say Neanderthals, but all of the other species, they would suddenly be invasive species, but from the past instead of from elsewhere.
So are you in favor of this de-extinction?
I'm very much in favor of having the technology to use in ways that could protect a lot of the animals. And in terms especially of plants, I am in favor of being able to bring back some of the heirloom plants that we have lost and whose genes we really may need. We are whittling down the variety of species so fast. And if you look at the farmlands, you know, there used to be a lot of biodiversity, many species. Now you have monocultures. You have inbred clans of cows and pigs and sheep. And there may well come a time when it occurs to us that we need some of the biodiversity that we have lost.
Bestselling author Diane Ackerman is in the studio with me. Her book is called The Human Age, The World Shaped by Us.
Can I bring up one more thing about that? I think we all agree that genetic engineering is ever so useful if what we're doing is making sure that a child is not born with a devastating genetic disease. On the other hand, mixing species, this is something we have to really think about. You can now buy tomatoes with the genes of salmon in them. It has to do with resistance to cold weather. But there are some things, some mixings that have been done just for fun so that you could have, green, shining, bioluminescent pets and goldfish and so on if you wanted. We have to think about those very carefully.
Well, you had mentioned invasive species. You know, we've all seen those YouTube videos of the Burmese pythons in Florida, which they have no business in Florida, eating alligators and then exploding and all kinds of stuff like that. Those pythons have pretty much wiped out all the small animals around them.
And so we have such a controversy. This is such a moral dilemma for environmentalists. On the one hand, do we really want to lose all of the gorgeous wildlife in the Everglades that we all grew up knowing about? You know, we identified the Everglades with so many different kinds of animals. Do we want to lose that? If we don't, if we want to keep that picture in our minds,
then we have to get rid of the pythons.
We do. We have to put in python wranglers and catch them. And
then export them back?
Well, if I had
what do we do with them?
Like
we need an immigration policy for pythons now?
Well, listen, I have been known to call up people in my hometown and ask if they can relocate wasps' nests and so on, only to be greeted with laughter. On the other hand, there are a lot of environmentalists who say, you should just allow nature to go about its way. We are the most invasive animal that has ever lived on the planet. Certainly when we entered ecosystems, we got rid of a lot of the wildlife that was there. And nobody is saying we'll get rid of humans so that we can have, the land back. So what are you going to choose to do? I'm not sure yet how I feel about it. I want nature to go about its way and the dynamic interplays of nature to happen, and if it happens to prefer pythons, well, that's life. On the other hand, we moved the pythons here, and we turned them loose. So this is not a question of nature being pristine or a paradise. That ship has sailed. Nature is not other than us any longer. Nature is still natural, but it's not separate from us.
Let's talk about sustainable energy. Why is something like solar power so much more expensive than fossil fuels?
Well, it's not anymore. Nobody realized or predicted that solar was going to become affordable as quickly as it is. It's becoming hugely affordable.
So let's just switch.
Exactly. Let's just switch. So you're going to need to tell the fossil fuel industry. Yes.
No, you tell them.
No, you tell them, all of their lobbyists, that we want to switch. But bear in mind that Saudi Arabia, a place, of course, we identify with oil, they are switching. They're exporting their oil, and they are turning to renewables to use at home because it's more affordable. We can switch. There's no reason why we can't, and there are a number of countries around the world that are doing that.
Talk about what's happening in Sweden, because they seem to really be at the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff.
And they need to be because, of course, it's cold there. So their energy is expensive, and they have to find ways to handle it. And they are doing wonderful, wonderful things to switch to renewables of every imaginable kind, including human heat. I love that. So at their big train station in Stockholm, when people are bustling about and they are trying to catch their connections, they are giving off heat, unbeknownst to them, and it's being gathered and piped underground where it's heating water, which is then being piped across the street and heating the office buildings there. In some subway stations in Paris, the same thing is happening. And in China, the subways produce so much wind going by, that's being collected and turning turbines and being used. Also, I think that we are going to be moving very quickly into a culture where we don't just use things, including experiences and processes and walking, getting around, for just one purpose. It's conceivable that you could have people sharing their heat with neighbors, friends, strangers. But then Sweden's doing lots of other things, too. They're using a lot of solar and hydroelectric, and they are recycling 99% of the household waste.
That's incredible.
It is incredible, but it's doable. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. We're kind of behind things in this country.
You know, there's a train station in Paris with a cell phone charging table, and you sit there, and it has a stationary bike attached to the seat.
That's great.
So you have to essentially create your own energy in order to charge your cell phone.
I love that. And I've seen really quite adorable cell phone charger trees that are little solar panels instead of the umbrella of leaves, and you can set your devices up. We are not taking advantage of this. Coal is really buried sunlight. Why drink from a cup when you can drink from the source?
The book we're discussing is called The Human Age, The World Shaped by Us. Diane Ackerman is a best-selling author, and she's in the studio with me. Diane, what visible impact have we had on our oceans?
Well, unfortunately, we've been using fertilizers so much that all of those things have been polluting the oceans, and the oceans have been turning more acidic. Unfortunately, that means that the calcium shells of the shellfish begin to melt. And as the oceans are warming, various ocean creatures are migrating, just like the animals do on land. So all of a sudden, you find swarms of jellyfish in harbors where you never found them before. The oyster beds are disappearing. Now, that's very important because the oyster beds used to protect the shores, not just of the eastern United States, but all over the world. And oysters have disappeared, like 85% of the beds around the world. And they served an important function. They would break the waves as they were coming in from hurricanes so that they couldn't drive down the estuaries with as much force. We need those, and there's no reason why we can't rebuild them.
So we can get it back?
We could. We could build artificial reefs, and there are people who are planning to do that. We could become 3D oyster, algae, mussel, kelp fisher people. And I went out oyster fishing with one such person in the Long Island Sound. There's a blue revolution taking place. Now, as we're discussing this, there will be a lot of people who are listening and saying, no, you shouldn't interfere with nature at all. It's not our place. Our place is to stand off and be peripheral to nature and to visit nature and to use nature and to be stewards of nature, but not hands-on. As I was saying a little bit earlier, it's too late for that. There is no particle of the planet that we have not touched. You can find our fingerprints everywhere.
Even in outer space.
Even in outer space, especially, let's say you were spying on our planet from afar. You would find that it glittered at night. And you would find that the constellations were on the planet, not just in the heavens, and that the lights were much too regular, too methodical, too planned to be natural. We are telling everybody in the universe that we are here, that we are clever, and that for whatever reason we like to light up our planet with garlands of light because, among other things, we've extended our senses. And this is one of the ways in which we have. We've gotten so good at taking charge of nature that we don't even play by the rules we were born with. We now think it's totally natural to be able to move around at night and see, because we can turn on lights. We think it's natural for humans to go 500 miles an hour through the sky. We think it's natural for humans to be able to do calculations at speed and to see microscopic things and to understand what's hidden inside of us through imaging and so on. We take all of this for granted, but we have achieved majestic accomplishments in only the last 200 years.
You know, one person you spoke to said, quote, "The challenge is not technological, it's changing the way people think." What does that mean beyond, we should all take shorter showers and recycle more?
We have to change our attitude about how we relate to nature. We have to understand that we used to be adapting to the environment, and what we've done now is created our own human environment in which we've embedded nature. And pay attention to what we are doing. We made a lot of mistakes accidentally, largely through our inventiveness, so we can apply our inventiveness to help us get out of some of these things, but we have to want to do it and recognize the urgency.
Why do we not want to do it?
I think it's very hard to face up to climate change. It's something that the brain finds difficult because it requires a lot of sacrifices right now to offset potential uncertain losses in the future that we might not even be around to see. There are a lot of sacrifices that we may have to make, and we might not see the effect in our lifetime. We've already created some effects that are irreversible. Could be that the Greenland ice sheets will continue melting for hundreds of years. It could be that the sea levels will rise, and part of our challenge as a species will be to help the most vulnerable among us adapt. It's also entirely possible that we will seize the moment, see this as a great opportunity to rise up as a species and apply our collective resources and skills to offsetting as much of the climate change problems as we can and making sure that it doesn't get worse. The UN panel on climate change said that it is technologically possible to curb it. The question is it politically feasible? That is the big issue. And I think that means the ball is in our court, or rather the planet is in our court, if we choose to take seriously what is happening and get moving on it. We can. There are lots of things that we can do, and I talk about them in my book. And some of them you can do from at home. If you're young and fit enough, you can get out there and work. I would love to see the VISTA and AmeriCorps programs combined and have an environmental spin so that after high school, kids are obliged to donate 1 year of working for the planet. They would love it, I think. It would educate them enormously in lots of ways. They could have part of their schooling paid for if they agreed to do that.
The book we're discussing is called The Human Age, The World Shaped by Us. Diane Ackerman is a best-selling author, and she's in the studio with me.
Can I add one more thing about...
You're constantly doing that.
I'm
Go
so
ahead.
sorry. About why we are not, why we know now that we are not separate from nature. One of the most recent discoveries about us is that we are a superorganism. Every human being really has 10 times as much DNA from microscopic critters that travel with us, from bacteria, from protozoa, and that we are constantly exchanging information with the environment, and that some of these little creatures are leaping off of us, and they're leaping onto our friends, and we're absorbing other people all the time. And we are not one solid anything. We are very much a part of nature that is in constant exchange with the rest of nature all the time. We know this now, but it's a very recent finding.
Tell me about 3D printers. How do they work?
Well, first of all, they work like any inkjet printer works. They go back and forth, and they deposit microscopic layers of whatever it is, whatever the ink is. Anything you can turn into ink can build something up. So you could make food if you wanted to. You could make cupcakes that say, "Happy Birthday, Mom," inside. You could do whatever. But a really important thing you could do is 3D print organs and cartilage.
This is what blew my mind. Because you talked to one doctor that was printing human ears.
Yes.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. And yet it was done very simply. He put living cells as the ink into the printer. He used computer hardware to program exactly the tailor-made shape of the ear for a child who was born without that ear. And the printer, which doesn't look any larger than a toaster oven, goes back and forth depositing these little cells until it builds up the 3D ear.
And he can make an ear in 15 minutes.
Yes. Isn't that astonishing?
It is. Now, can you make, a kidney, a liver, a heart?
The more complicated the organs, the more difficult it will be, because it isn't just the creating of the outside. It's also creating all of the networks that provide sustenance to the organ. If you were doing a heart, you would have to do the arteries and the veins and the valves and the intricate network of blood supplies in all different ways that are suffusing the tissues. That becomes more difficult, but be that as it may, there are people all over the world who are working exactly on that. And certainly something like cartilage, and the ear is mainly cartilage, but so are those vertebrae that we wear out. So is the kneecap that we wear out. Those are very easy to print, even now. And the human trials are going to start right away.
So what are the implications of these printers?
Well, we're going to stay fit a lot longer than we have before.
Because we can just get replacement parts.
And will that make you feel more reckless?
Maybe.
It could. And if you are able to have offspring later on, what happens with the DNA that they inherit? Men can take Viagra and they can stay potent longer, but children who are born to older fathers have special medical problems. So that's going to be another one of those ethical problems we're going to have to think about.
Diane, there's something that you said in your book that I want to ask you about. You said, quote, "A big challenge for us in the human age will be reclaiming the sense of presence." What does that mean?
It's so easy for us to live second-hand, third-hand in the digital age. We virtually explore nature now, and we're not out there experiencing nature in the right now, all of our senses fully open to the world way that we used to. When I was growing up, we used to beg to go outside and play. That was probably true when you were growing up, too. Now, most of the way children play is indoors and on a screen. And in some ways, that's wonderful and can be very rich, but you don't use all of your senses doing that. And it's to our cost that we don't. Kids are becoming more short-sighted all over the world. We are learning about things like, let's say, the Antarctic and the icebergs, but unless you go there, you don't know what they sound like when they are calving, and you don't know what the quality of air really is like. You don't know what the different shades inside of the icebergs are like. And so you miss a lot of the information about the world that you would have otherwise. Also, we're changing our brains. We're rewiring our brains by using screens. It's shown now that most kids are doing their reading on screen, but they're retaining almost 50% less. We don't know why that is. Is it because of the luminosity of the screens? Does it have something to do with distractibility? What does it have to do with? We don't know exactly. The place in the brain that represents the thumb is much larger from text messaging. So we're changing our brains through this digital revolution. I'm in favor of it. I love all of the different digital devices that we use. I use them. I tweet. I have Facebook. I have all of that. But we do need to keep our eye on the kinds of things we might be giving up, like a sense of presence in the world where you just go outside and see what miracles have happened overnight.
Diane Ackerman, she's the best-selling author. Her book is The Human Age, The World Shaped by Us. Diane, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.